Women's cycling is thriving. We have more women on bikes than ever before. We have more women's races than ever before, and we have more women being paid to ride bikes than ever before. Women all over the world are on bikes and making their mark.
Woo! I'm a warrior, bitch!
But it's not always easy being a woman in cycling. But I'm here to help and give you all the tips to make being a woman in cycling a breeze. But before we get started, make sure to share this video with all your female riding buddies. And men, you can watch this too, because the more people understand about women's cycling, the better. For this video, I'm going to be joined by one of cycling's finest female riders, Ashley Moorman-Passio. With well over a decade of experience in women's cycling, she's going to help me give you more of an insight into women's cycling and hopefully some tips for us female riders. We also spoke to Australian track and road cyclist Kate Bates and Director of Women's Strategy at Zwift, Kate Veronu. Let's get started with some tips from Ashley on how to get into cycling.
My advice for newcomers, particularly women, is to try and find a community or a group that you can join. And I think at the moment, like Zwift represents the best opportunity for this because there's plenty of really supportive groups on Zwift. I myself have a community on Zwift called Rockacorba Collective, and the whole objective is to create a fun and inspiring space for women to come together.
Well, I definitely am a little biased here because of Zwift. We have hundreds of thousands of women around the world, social rides, training, kind of whatever you want. All sorts of groups, international groups. That is an incredible way to connect with women and to ride from the comfort of your home. Not everybody lives in a community that has, safe roads and a lot of group rides. If you do have group rides, go to your local shops, look on social media, Strava, connect with local women as well.
I think the advice I'd give to women wanting to get into cycling, but not necessarily the competitive type, is just to get out and give it a go. I think a lot of it is about confidence, and so finding like-minded people to ride with. There's a lot of tutorials, YouTube, there's a lot on Facebook and community groups, but just getting connected, because the challenges that you have, we see most riders have when they're first stepping into it. It can be a little bit intimidating, especially for the women, but there's a lot of people, a lot of friendly faces to help you break down some barriers. It is the age of social media. There's some really great apps out there now that provide that kind of connectivity, and whether it's something like the Chicks Who Ride Bikes app that literally is like a ride buddy finder. You put your details in and try and find somebody to ride with, or whether it's something like Zwift where you can join a women's only ride or just a broad community ride. And it takes a little bit of courage to get out there, but once you're out there you find that you belong. Advice and tips for people to stay comfortable on the saddle. I think it's the most asked question ever. And I think the biggest piece of advice is to never accept if you're in pain. Saddles are not comfortable when you first sit on them, but they're not supposed to be uncomfortable either. Anatomically, we're all really different. And if you walk into a bike shop and there's someone selling you a saddle who can't relate to you and doesn't really understand the issues you have to walk out and go somewhere else. And I think it's the same with chamois as well, finding a pair that works for you and buying 10 of those. Yeah, don't stray from the good chamois.
There's so many situations where women have just kind of accepted that it's going to hurt down there, it's not going to be comfortable, and they just think, oh, well, that's, I'm sitting on a saddle, it's not meant to be comfortable, but really, you can make it work, and it doesn't have to be hell for you.
No, it doesn't. And so, I'm, for example, on a time trial saddle on my road bike.
Breaking the rules.
Exactly, totally breaking the rules, but it's what works for me. And yeah, it's really, really important, as you say, just to keep trying until you find that solution and that combination of saddle and chamois that works.
So next up, moving on to the menstrual cycle and being a woman riding a bike on your period. Sometimes it's not the best. How have you felt like you've dealt with periods on your bike? Is it something that's sometimes held you back?
Yeah, I mean, it's really a challenge because, I mean, that's the biggest difference between men's and women's cycling is that we have fluctuating hormones and men don't. And it has been, a real limiter at times because, if it does come to a really big event and you end up having your period during the event, it can be the reason for sort of holding you back and not necessarily getting the best out of yourself. And having said that, again, it's pretty much trying to figure out what works for you. Again, it's quite individual. So, for example, in my case, I just don't respond very well to the contraceptive pill. It just affects me badly mentally. It makes me more inclined to be depressed and not really to feel myself. So I've made the decision not to be on the contraceptive pill, which then makes it even more difficult to control the hormones and to control the times at which you're getting your menstrual cycle. So it's just, again, learning how to probably manage it. There's a lot of literature out there at the moment. Dr. Stacey Sims actually, has written a lot of stuff about, how you can even change your diet and what you're eating and supplementation, to better handle PMS and stuff like that. I am a type of person that does also suffer from quite bad PMS or bad pain. So as I said, it's about figuring out what painkiller works for you and being a bit proactive with it rather than waiting until the pain gets really bad. I think what I've also learned to embrace is that actually, contrary to what you think, you're actually often your strongest, especially the day before. And then even while you're having your period, if you can manage the pain, you are actually super strong in those situations. I think that's what helps me to get through it, is to realize that it's actually not debilitating me in terms of strength. So if I can manage all the symptoms that come along with it and just try to find a comfortable space for myself, then I'm still going to be super strong. Yeah. So I think that's the way that I try to approach it. It's important to, I suppose, be comfortable to talk about it. Don't be afraid as a female cyclist to bring it up in conversation and to ask what other people's experiences are, because maybe you can learn something from it.
Another point I wanted to mention is if you are on your period and you're going out on bikes, you might want to try a menstrual cup. Now, if you haven't heard of a menstrual cup before, it's kind of like a soft silicone cup that you can use instead of a tampon. And in my opinion, they are a lot better than tampons. You can leave them in for a lot longer, they collect a lot more blood, and they are reusable and really good for the environment. So you can just take them out and wash them. So they are a really good option if you're going out on long rides or you haven't got access to a toilet, which can be a bit of a faff. And a lot of girls in the pro peloton use them as well. So a menstrual cup can be a great alternative for us women riding bikes.
Yeah, for new riders to build confidence, I think it takes a little bit of bravery, but nailing the small skills is where it is. Because if you can't relax on a bike, then every bump, every corner becomes quite daunting, every hill. And the small things, learning how to indicate on a bike, take a hand off, take a drink, are some really big things. And some of them you can actually nail on an indoor bike. You can learn to take one hand off, take a drink, turn around, do all that sort of thing. And it's almost like a kid learning how to get out of your seat as well to go up hills. And when you put that all together, you just feel so much more comfortable that the confidence then comes like a wave. But without the basics, you're just waiting for it to all come undone. So never skip the basics.
Number one is just get yourself out there and ride with people that are stronger, more experienced than you. Ask questions, watch videos, try new things, challenge yourself. That's the beauty of cycling is, there's constant challenges to get better, to get stronger, to get more comfortable. So definitely just keep pushing yourself and especially work with other riders that are willing to give you feedback on your form, on your safety, on how to get stronger. If you don't push yourself, you're not gonna get stronger. If you don't put yourself in slightly uncomfortable situations, you're not gonna get more confident. So be vulnerable, but ride with people that have more experience than you, that you can really learn from. Don't take yourself too seriously, number one. Wear fun kit, number two. I think make sure you mix up the rides. Don't always just go hard all the time. Cycling is a beautiful, fun sport. It's a social sport. It's a joyful sport. There's coffee stops, donut stops. Just make sure you enjoy every aspect of it. You know, there's plenty of time to go hard, but there's plenty of time to go easy and enjoy the people you're with, enjoy the scenery, take it all in, know that you're making friends, making fitness, and just enjoy every moment. It's an incredible sport that you can do for your entire life.
So Ashley, we're lucky enough to stop at a nice cafe today. They have toilets here, we can go for a wee. But I think the biggest question everybody wants to know in women's cycling is how do you go to the toilet on the bike when you're racing? It's quite easy for men, they can just do their thing, but for women, a little bit more complicated.
Yeah, it's a lot more complicated. So generally the way it works in the peloton while we're racing is that you'd usually find that if someone needs to go to the loo and it's you have to wait for times in the race where it's a little bit calmer or quieter, or it's a stretch of sort of flattish road. And then usually it sort of starts off by someone going, I need to pee, do you need to pee? You know, and the message starts getting spread around the peloton about who needs to pee, or there's someone stopping for a pee break, you know. And so we try and kind of gather a couple of people, and especially across different teams, to all stop at one time, so that it kind of neutralizes the racing and makes it not super stressful. And then, yeah, it's an interesting one, and this even differs amongst the peloton how people approach it. In a race, I'm the type of person that tries to do the pull the bib shorts wide enough that you don't have to undress yourself. But there are plenty of girls out there who are still a bit uncomfortable with that because they're worried about what happens if it goes wrong, you know, that they're going to wet themselves and that they have to race the rest of the race that way. So some completely like strip down, and some pull the bibs and, you know, try and pee that way. So it still differs amongst the peloton, but usually we're quite supportive of one another and we all kind of stop together so that there is less stress and we can actually have a pee in peace.
And I guess, like, for some women who might be uncomfortable doing that, I have seen women's groups that will go out and they'll actually factor in a wee stop at, you know, a cafe or something like that, which is really good. But, you know, sometimes we're riding with men, we don't really want to wee in front of them. How do you go about dealing with that?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, 14th year as a pro, I'm pretty comfortable with squatting. But yeah, I mean, that's always the best. Of course, if there is an option to stop and to go to a toilet at a cafe, that's always the best option. Or even, it might even be a fuel station, you know, to stop at and use the toilet at the fuel station. And when it comes to men, I suppose it's just about, usually if you communicate amongst the group that, okay, we're stopping for a pee break, or even if you're the only woman, I'm stopping for a pee break. Usually the men are pretty respectful, you know.
You went over there, I'm going over there.
Exactly.
So women who, you know, young women who aren't inspired to race, you know, want to be professional cyclists, what advice would you give them? What would you say is the easiest way to become a professional cyclist? Not that there's an easy way about it, but what advice do you give them?
For me, the advice is always, you know, to really enjoy what you're doing, because cycling is not an easy sport. You know, there's so much that's out of our control. So we do all the hard work, preparation. You might arrive at a race as the favorite or in best condition to win, and then some bad luck with a crash or a mechanical happens. And so, you know, being able to pick yourself up, you know, out of those really disappointing and challenging periods, you really need to love what you're doing. So, like, I think that's what's most important for me.
Yeah, there's a lot of women who start their cycling journey just to have a little bit of fun. If they want to get into professional racing, it's a hard lifestyle. You've got to be determined. But I think the biggest thing is to knock on doors. I mean, I guess in this day and age, we don't literally do that anymore, but send emails, make phone calls, put your hand up, because joining a team now isn't just about your physiological capabilities. It's also about how you fit into a team, your personality, your spunk, your determination. And it really is a combination across teams of people with all those different traits. So you work hard, the physiology will work for itself. You've got to bring the rest, the determination, and you've got to show people that you have it.
What would you say is like the right age to start taking it seriously? Because especially in the sport now, you've seen so many youngsters become pros, you know, before they even leave in school, some of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, things are evolving. I mean, especially in women's cycling now, as it becomes, you know, more professional, better supported, better sponsorships, better salaries. It really is a career path now. So I would say that probably, you know, in the 16, 17, 18, you know, if you are cycling at school, then that's the time to start kind of trying to be more focused on it, because obviously, you know, the younger you come into the pro ranks, the more time you have to find your wings.
So there we have it, some really good tips to help some female cyclists. I really hope this video has helped you in some sort of way, but I just want to say a big thank you to Ashley, Kate and Kate for being in the video and speaking so honestly about everything. But I want to hear from you. Do you have any tips that we didn't mention in this video? And if you do, please leave them in the comment section below so we can all help each other. But for now, that's it. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up and I'll see you in the next one.